Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. All things Middle-earth here with the video on some of my favorite effects that can come on your different items in the game. If you are new to the game, you might get your first piece of gold gear and not really know what things are good and what things are not good. So I want to talk about a few of my favorite things. Now I will say this is just a list of my favorite 10 or some of my favorites that I see that I use or I see on the field. So this is not an all-inclusive list. So there are potentially other ones I don't talk about here that are still very, very good, or when used correctly, they'd be very good. So just because an item's not on this list or an effect is not on this list, don't just trash it. But there are some here that if I had known in my first season and a half, that let's say Aegis was a good effect, I probably wouldn't have got rid of some helmets that had it in my first season. So stay tuned. I'm trying to save you some headache a few seasons down the road. Coming up in just a second. All right, I mentioned it in the intro, so we're just going to put it as the first one on the list. Aegis is one of the best effects in the game. If you're not familiar, for the first 4 rounds, when fully refined, it will make your army stun and madness immune, which is very, very, very helpful. There's a little confusion because it says each army here. It doesn't do it for each army. If you read through the battle reports, people thought that this maybe did. If you read through the reports, it's just for your army. So your army being stun immune and madness immune for the first 4 rounds can make sure they can get a lot more done without being hindered by any teams that do stun a lot or any teams that throw out madness. It's a very, very good piece. And there's a reason that it is the most refined piece I have. I only have one fully refined piece of gear. It's this helmet that has Aegis. My second most refined gold piece of gear is another helmet that has Aegis. So those are the things that I've looked for the most. Again, it will involve some luck in RNG for sure. And you might have 12 helmets that could have it that don't. But if you're in your first season and you happen to get either one of these helmets with Aegis, chances are you should hold on to it because you'll want it down the road. Number 2 on the list for effects that you should definitely look out for and hold on to is Tactical Mark. Now, Tactical Mark, my favorite item it comes on is the Palantir of Orthanc, which is only available in the evil chest. So you won't be able to get this specific item in the good chest, but the effect is very, very good. It's for the first 3 rounds, all allied units are going to gain Pursuit, which means they ignore evasion. They also get a chance to cause max damage. As Pursuit to ignore the evasion is the big thing that we're looking at here, and that a guaranteed chance to do so. Other purple items have to be fully refined to get even up to like a 90% chance to get that done. So the guaranteed chance here is very, very good. Now I will make a caveat here and say that items that have the Hunter's Mark purple items like this one here, they have a 90% chance, but it does apply to the commander and the army. So if you're using just a commander that buffs the army, this Tactical Mark here that just does it for the allied units, that's just for the troops, that's fine. If you are using a damage commander though, the commander is doing a lot of the damage themselves, you may want to look at getting an item with Pursuit that actually affects the commander. But overall, Pursuit's a very good effect in the game, and the items that have it are very worth holding on to. Next one up is going to be Might of Elves. This is going to be specifically on the Elven White Knife. The reason I'm putting this one here is because there are not a lot of items or big items that the elves can hold. So the Elven White Knife is the by far and away best item for Elven commanders. Again, there could be some argument depending on how you're using them, but for the most part, Might of Elves is going to give you a % damage increase. A lot of other effects in here are okay, but they definitely pale in comparison to the Might of Elves. Again, I've got a White Knife here. It's got lots of army attack. It's a great thing. We're not going to get too much into it, but if you happen to get a Elven White Knife with Might of Elves and you're a good side player, which again, that's how you get this, you might want to look at running a commander who would really benefit from that item and this effect specifically. The next one that I like a lot is Cleave. Cleave is for commanders who do damage themselves. So your Dwallins, your Gimlis, your tier 2 Aragorn, really King Aragorn as well. Any commanders who are doing a lot of damage themselves, Cleave is usually the best case effect for them on gold weapons. Now you could talk about lethal weapon on a few other options, so that's a good one to keep your eye out for. But for the most part, Cleave, the battle axe has some of the highest might in the game here on the item. So all just might, nothing else here for the commander and Cleave. So normal attacks have a 50% chance of dealing an additional 40%, and it increases as you go on here. So if you go to the special effects page, you can click C, max refined stats. We see it gets up to 240% physical damage. So again, Cleave is one of those things that if you get it in your first couple seasons, you might want to hold on to it because it's usable on so many commanders, and it's a very, very good item for damage commanders. Now this one, I don't know if this will be as agreed upon because I think there are a lot of good options on items that have resistance protection. So the next one here is resistance protection. And it's going to give you all your allied units protection against burn, poison, and focus damage. Now poison is not too crazy, but typically focus is very common, and fire damage is very, very common, or burn damage. So at full refinement, having 30% more resistance, a lot of commanders might have an ability that already reduces it a little bit. So increased resistance here could be good, or for commanders who do not have a way to reduce burn damage coming in, that 30% could make a little difference. Now, again, some of these items that have, you know, the High Elf Halberd, for example, here, they have other really good, you know, effects as well. Fortitude of Elves is great, Resilience of Elves. So this is an item that is pretty good regardless, but the resistance protection, it's on a few different ones, is one that I definitely look for. And if I were running some elves, I'd probably look to run this High Elf Halberd with that effect on them, so they don't get, you know, burned up by any Witch Kings or anything like that. The next one is one that I've been chasing for a long time, and I just cannot seem to get, and that is Tranquility. Tranquility is every 3 rounds, allied units remove 1 random debuff, and 3 allied units recover 5% HP. Now, the big thing here is just that every 3 rounds, starting in the very first round, at the beginning of the battle, you're going to remove a random debuff. So this can be used on a variety of different characters, both your Gandalfs, but there are some other options. Again, I'll link a video on the Mouth of Sauron, for example, up in the top right, if you want to see kind of a unique way to use this Tranquility, where you can cleanse effects off of your own army that you're actually putting on them yourself. So he kind of, in my opinion, gets into a different league that way. He's definitely very, very meta relevant already, but it just makes him a little bit more scary. So Tranquility on a Grey Wizard hat. It also is on the Ancient Numenorian helm. This is one of those things I cannot get. I have gone through so many of these. I have bought so many of the Ancient Numenorian helms from the end of the season shop. Can't get it. So if you get lucky and get Tranquility, do not let it go, because I can't get it to drop for the life of me. Another one that has a lot of uses is Discord. This is on a couple of different helmets, but Discord in the first 2 rounds at max refinement has a guaranteed chance to inflict madness each round. So when madness goes out, when it goes out, it still is only a 50-50 shot of applying and kind of being carried out fully. So having that fully refined chance to then have a coin flip chance is a lot better than having like a, you know, 30% chance to then send it off to go to be a 50% chance, if that makes sense. But all that to say, the Discord, the madness infliction going out in the first rounds, if someone is not protected from madness and you happen to have a Discord helm, they're most likely going to get very, very shredded up in the first couple rounds, where, again, depending on the type of army it is, all that, there's a lot that goes into it. It can be very, very useful. So one of those things that it's on a handful of items. If you happen to see Discord, I think it's one worth hanging on to. Again, now in this game, gear is a lot more friendly, so it's not as brutal as it used to be. You can actually break gear down with the Elven Craftsman's hammer, but that does cost you resources. So don't waste your hammers. You know, don't just get rid of your gear knowing that like down the road you can change that, because you actually have to pay to get those hammers with your end of season points, which are very, very limited, and you can only buy 2 at a time. So every season you can undo 2 gear choices that you've made, basically. So again, limit those by hopefully listening to some of this and seeing some stuff like Discord or whatever we've talked about, and hold on to those. So Discord's that next one that is a very fun effect that I enjoy using on different commanders. The next 2 are very similar, so I'll go quickly, but it is first 3 rounds against enemy melee units, damage dealt -5%, and that scales up. So if you're wearing a melee suppression Cask of Pride, for example, in this one, the enemy melee units deal less damage. The next one on the list, and we'll just jump right to it and then talk about both of these, is arrow suppression. Same thing, but for range units. So for example, if you're using a Ballin with a Retaliate build, so you get a Ballin who only uses melee troops, and they retaliate when they're attacked by melee troops. So they are pretty hard countered by something like Sun End, who's a ranged build. You wear this item here with arrow suppression, that could definitely minimize the damage that you're getting, you know, dealt by. Now Sun End's going to wreck a lot of stuff regardless, but if you get hit by a ranged commander, an extra, you know, 30% damage being taken off of them is going to be a big difference. Likewise, the same thing with the melee suppression on the Cask of Pride here, for example. If you happen to go up against a Witch King, you're running a Cask of Pride with melee suppression, you're running a burn chest to reduce the fire damage, you can get that damage down low enough to where you actually don't get nuked by Witch King, which is something that is difficult to do, but doable. So melee suppression and arrow suppression, keep your eye out, because they are very, very good. And last but not least, I just mentioned it, is Retaliate. Retaliate is a very fun effect that isn't usable or great on every single commander. So just because you have Retaliate doesn't mean you just go ahead and use it. But there are commanders who have specific skills that, let's say, heal your units when they deal damage. So if you have an item that allows them to counterattack and deal more damage, that means they get healed more. So there are these Retaliate builds on a number of characters like Lurtz, Saruman, and my favorite is Ballin, example uses the Maddock of the Iron Hills in this example here, and Retaliate makes that thing very, very good. Now, I don't have, this is pulled up in the chest here because I don't have one in this account, but it's one of those things that first couple seasons, you happen to get Retaliate and you're playing on the good side, you could set up a ball in pretty early and all of a sudden really be wrecking your opponents who are using any melee builds. Again, you got to watch out for those Sun-Ins and the range builds. That's where that Iron Bassinet we talked about could come in handy. But Retaliate's a very, very fun build and one I'm starting to see more and more of, and it just makes me want to continue building mine. I have one of my other account that I'm running, and I just want to keep building it more and more because it's a lot of fun. But that is going to do it for our list of 10 item effects that you should keep an eye out for. Again, like I said at the beginning, this is not an all-inclusive list. There are a ton of good effects in the game. The best thing to do is hop into the Discord and join there so you can get some advice if you have questions about what you should get rid of or shouldn't get rid of. There's lots of resources out there on the internet. You're looking through different build videos and all that kind of stuff. We got resources all over the place in the channel and the Discord. So moral of the story is make informed decisions as much as you can, because while gear is in the best spot it has been in, it still does cost you a little bit to undo mistakes you make. So trying to put videos out there, especially for new players, to help them not make mistakes if possible. So if you get that really good lucky pull in the first season or two while you're still just kind of learning how to play, you might down the road have a fully refined Aegis helmet because you knew from season 1 to hang on to that effect that you luckily pulled in the first little bit. Or you could be like me, knowing that you have trashed like probably 5-10 really good effect items, and a long time ago when the game came out, there wasn't a way to undo, so they're gone forever. Now thankfully there is a way to undo. Again, I talked about the Elven Craftsman's Hammer. These puppies here can undo some of those mistakes, but don't make mistakes just to undo them. Think through your decisions, maybe be a little bit thoughtful in it, and you will not regret it. But that'll do it for today's video, and I hope to see you guys in a future one.